Okay, thanks.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We are at the best time of year. I mean, this is really an amazing time of year for a bunch of reasons. First of all, we're in the first Adar. And this weekend on Sunday, we'll celebrate the second Adar. We'll have the introduction of the month of Adar, which is the happiest time of the year. And what I want to talk about tonight and sort of uncover over the next few weeks is why this is such a happy time. And it's important to focus on the fact that Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, which means, what does that mean? Sarah, what does that mean? Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. I know you know this. The questions get harder from here, so I would go for this one. I would go for this one. When close. No, it's very Misha Nichnas Adar. What's it mean?
Comes into Adar.
When it comes into Adar, yeah, Marbim B'Simcha. We increase happiness. We increase joy. And I want to discuss what is so joyful about Adar. Now, what holiday is in Adar, obviously? It's in the second Adar. We have two Adars this year. And it's in the second Adar. And it's interesting to be at a time where we're supposed to be the most joyous in the world, right? The most happy time of year. This is it. This is the most joyful time of the year, despite what other songs might say other months are the happiest time of the year. This is the most joyful time of year. Why is this month so joyful? What is it about Purim that makes us feel such joy? And that's what I want to go into tonight and over the next few weeks leading up to Pesach and understanding the connection between Purim and Passover. And the name of this series is Purim, Pesach, and Artificial Intelligence. And I'm going to try to relate all three. And I'm mindful of the fact that we are having this discussion during one of the most challenging times in Jewish history. Now, we shouldn't kid ourselves. This is not just bad, what's going on in the world right now, but since Purim is a time when there was an evil vizier who worked for the king, who wanted to destroy all the Jewish people in the world. Because Haman, right? Because the king of the Purim story, Achashverosh, ruled 127 nations. He ruled from Hodu Ve'ad Kush. He ruled the entire world. And his vizier, Haman, wanted to destroy every Jew. Since that time, there has probably not been a more dangerous time for the Jewish people than right now. This is the first time in our lifetimes and in 5 lifetimes before ours that every single Jew is at risk right now. And this is an incredible time that we are told that we have to be incredibly happy and that we have to find some means of being happy. And I think that once we understand what Purim's all about, once we understand the nature of Purim, we'll understand how in the midst of what's happening right now, we can continue to learn Torah. We can continue to say tefillot, daven, and we can continue to get closer to God and be happy and to increase happiness as we approach Purim, and why this is such an auspicious time of year to increase that happiness, to get close to God. We're in the midst of a time period where not only is there a direct threat to the Jewish people, but spiritually, the whole world is threatened. We're seeing the undoing of society in multiple ways. Now, things that go against what we believe as Jews are happening left and right in this society, and it's a very, very difficult time. In fact, this contrast of us versus the secular world is not only what we're seeing in the dangers to the Jewish people, but it's in the technology that we have. The nature of artificial intelligence, right? What is artificial intelligence? Does anybody know what we hear so much about artificial intelligence? Maybe people use ChatGPT. What is artificial intelligence? Does anybody know how it works?
Well, what it does is superimposes somebody's voice or somebody's picture, mostly the voice, or something that the person's not saying, but it sounds like he's saying it.
Well, that's one of the things that you can do with artificial intelligence. And the way it does that, and in general, that is one of the things that you can do with artificial intelligence. The way artificial intelligence works is scientists have written code that will take huge amounts of data. And with that huge amounts of data, they can have a computer act like it's a human, act like it learns stuff, act like it can understand things the way a human can. So this algorithm actually teaches the computer how to understand things and how to learn things in a way that we never had before, in a way that it studies this mass amount of data, and it can study the history of a person and their speeches and create that person saying whatever you want it to say. It takes data and processes it in a way that it seems human. And in actuality, there is nothing human about this, but it is doing everything to make you believe it's human. There was something called the Turing test. And the Turing test said that the way you can determine if something's alive, if a computer's alive, is by talking to it. And if you can't tell whether it's a computer or a human, that means it has consciousness. It's alive. And if you spend enough time with ChatGPT, you'll believe that it's alive. If you ask it it's alive, it will tell you it's not alive, and the way it answers the question will convince you it's alive, that it understands what you're actually saying, that it has some sort of life connected to it, and clearly it doesn't. And you can look at the philosophers, the great philosophers today. One of them's name is Yuval Harari. Yuval Harari wrote a book called Sapiens and another book called Homo Deus, which means the God-man. And he talks about how we are just algorithms. We don't actually have free choice, according to his theory. We are just an evolution of a computer program, an evolution of ChatGPT, where somebody has programmed us to just do what we're doing, and we actually have no choice. And that's the big lie that's in ChatGPT and in artificial intelligence, that somehow it is human. It has what it means to be human. The Torah is very clear on what it is to be human. It means to have Tselem Elokim. And I think when we understand what Purim's all about, and why we celebrate Purim, and why this is a time of simcha, a time of joy, we will understand what it means to have Tselem Elokim, to be like God. Now, the Purim is so important that the Chazal, our rabbis, teach us that what is Yom Kippur? It's Yom Kippurim. It's almost as good. Yom means a day. Ke means like Purim. It's a day almost as good as Purim. That's how important Purim is. What is Yom Kippur? What do we do? What is our main purpose to do on Yom Kippur? What do we do on Yom Kippur? We repent. So it's really confronting who we are, right? It's like looking at yourself, figuring out what you've done right and wrong under your set of criterions, which should be from the Torah, and then saying, I have not lived up to who I could be. Purim, on the other hand, is about reconciling not our relationship with ourselves, but our relationship with God. And so I want us to understand the nature of how Purim allows us to understand the relationship with God. Where Yom Kippur lets us get back on track with ourselves, Purim lets us get back on track with our relationship with God. Purim is built on the idea that the universe, creation, the world, is just an excuse for us to find God. God created a universe, and in that universe, he created us. He created people. He created mankind. Why did God create us? What was the purpose of God creating us? What good did it do for God to create us? What did it do for him?
Praise him.
Do you think he needs our praise? Okay. From our perspective, if we were going to ascribe human emotions to God, that makes perfect sense. But we believe that God does not need our praises. He does not need our prayers. He does not need anything. God is absolutely perfect. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. He is one. He's whole. He's complete. He does not lack anything. The concept of missing something is not something that can be described about God or the way God acts. God is totally complete. So he doesn't need our prayers. So why did he create us? He doesn't need our praise. What did he do it for? Okay, we're his children. So why did he need to create children? Well, my wife, who's a doctor, will explain to you that we have a gene in us that tells us that we have to survive. And our survival instinct forces us to create children. And this is a very scientific approach to why we create children. Now, some people would say we do it because God told us to. That's another way of looking at it. But why did God have to create us as his children? What was the purpose of God's creation of humankind?
Possibly to spread his Torah throughout the world to generations and generations.
Why? Why did he do it? Why did he want to spread his Torah throughout the world for generations? Now, he created something that didn't exist, and then he said, oh, now I have to spread this Torah in this thing that I created. So why did he do it? These are the questions that come up from understanding Purim. Our nature of our confronting our relationship with us as humanity with God. And in understanding that is why we feel the joy of Adar, and we're going to get to that. So we still haven't figured out why God created mankind. So I'm going to argue that God, and this is based on Chazal, and I'll tell you the different psukim this is based on. I'm going to argue that the reason that God created us is just because. He created us just because he wanted to show kindness. He wanted to show love. There's an equation between being kind to somebody and loving them. And he just wanted to show love. So when Barry says he wanted to have children, he wanted to manifest his love. Because God is all about love. And the creation of the universe, it says, Bereshit bara Elokim, God tried to create the universe and he thought to do it, and God doesn't change his mind. He thought to do it with the attribute of judgment. And then he changed and he did it out of total mercy. Mercy, the concept of chesed, the concept of being kind, of loving kindness, is the concept of doing something for someone just because. Not because you're going to get anything in return. You're going to get nothing in return from giving, from smiling at somebody and making them feel good for the day. You will not get anything in return for that. You may feel good, but in actuality, you are getting nothing that is changing your existence. But God created a world where he could show his loving kindness. And if you look at each of the mitzvot of Purim, they are all directed to this idea of getting out of this world and getting to a point where you experience total kindness and goodness and love for each other. Look at the mitzvot of Purim. You read the story of Purim to tell us the concept of why we're doing what we're doing. But the mitzvot are, you give money to poor people, matanot le'evyonim, right? So first mitzvah is to read the Megillah, to read the story. Second is matanot le'evyonim, that you give gifts to poor people. That doesn't do anything for you. Now the Chazal rabbis tell us that if you give money to poor people, you get the money back, and that's a good way to protect any money you have. But at the end of the day, when you give money away, you are doing it the way we should be doing it, is totally out of loving kindness. Not because it gives anything to us, but because we are giving of ourselves, much like God gave of himself when he created the entire universe. And then the other big mitzvah of the Purim day is mishloach mano, to send gifts to your friends, to show love to each other for no reason but just because. Just because God said it, whatever the reason, it's just because. We are doing things just because. The same way that God created a universe just because. And Purim is really the holiday of just because. There's no reason for being loving. There's no reason to love somebody. Love is probably the least pragmatic thing in the world. Love is not about pragmatism. It's the exact opposite of pragmatism. It's about doing things for somebody just because you love them, just because. You do things for someone. You do kindness for somebody just because you love them. You become kind to somebody only out of a sense of kindness. What does Rabbi Akiva says is one of the central themes of the Torah? What is the central theme of the Torah? The Ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you should love your neighbor as yourself. That is the central theme of the Torah, is this idea of love. And by the way, that love extends not only to other people, but you have to love yourself. And the timing's perfect. We're honored to have with us Rabbi Sholem Orgel, who's the secretary, who was the secretary to the Alter Rebbe of Tush. And the Tusher Rebbe would say that there's no way to love other people unless you love yourself. The only way to love other people is to love yourself. And Purim is a story of love. Purim, the mitzvot are about love. Everything about Purim is about love. And if you look at what the Jews were doing at the time of Purim, do you know why the rabbis tell us all these things happened to us? Why did the Purim story, why did God have to do all these things according to the rabbis? What did the Jews do wrong to deserve this? They'd been kicked out of Eretz Yisrael, the temple had been destroyed, but what had they done wrong in the Purim story that showed that they were no longer attached to God?
They ate at the banquet.
They were invited to a huge party by Achashverosh. And at this huge party, Achashverosh dressed up like the Kohen Gadol, and he handed out the cups and all the equipment that was used in the Beis HaMikdash, and all the Jews were invited to the party, and they ate and drank with King Achashverosh, and they had given up on God. And because of that, the entire story of Purim happened. And what we realize is that the story of Purim and all the challenges that came out of Purim were actually designed to bring us back to God. And the reason he did it is not because we deserved it, because we certainly didn't. We were at a party where we were drinking out of the kelim from the Beit HaMikdash, out of the cups from the Beit HaMikdash. But yet God decided to save us. You know why? Just because he loved us. Just because he wanted to show chesed to us, because he wanted to show kindness. And the whole universe was created because of chesed, because of kindness. In Tehillim, it talks about the creation of the universe. And it says in Tehillim, in the 89th Tehillim, it says, Ki amarti olam chesed yibana. I have built a world of loving kindness. And then it goes on in a later Tehillim to say, in Tehillim 136, it says, he who makes heaven with understanding, for his kindness endures forever. He did all this creation of the universe. He created the heavens, it says, the water. Everything he did was Kili Olam Chasda, was only because he loves us, just because he wanted to show kindness to us and be kind to us. So the idea that love is the idea of doing something just because you love somebody. That's the essence of being like God. And if you're going to say that, you wind up doing things for people you love that are not logical, that are not pragmatic. It was not logical for God to create mankind. We cannot figure that out. Why? Because it was a matter of love. It makes no sense. Why would something that is absolutely complete, that needs absolutely nothing in the world, right? There is no world. It's just, Bereshis bara Elokim, and it was Yom Echad. There was just God. There was nothing else, right? There was nothing else in the universe except for God. But God withdrew himself somehow and created us because he wanted to manifest this idea of love, which was for no reason. It was just because. So we see that the whole nature of doing the mitzvot of Purim and the story of Purim comes from God loving us, comes from our being in a position where we did not deserve to be saved. Where things were as bad. This is, once more, I'm going to say something that Rabbi Orgel didn't hear before he came in. This is the most dangerous time in Jewish history since Purim. This is it. We're living through it right now. And during the last time that this happened, God stepped in and saved the Jewish people just because. Not because they deserved it, but because they loved us, because he loved us. It says in the Gemara something amazing about Purim. You know, we had dozens of prophets who told us how to act and told us how to be good people and how to serve God and come close to God. What do you think the most powerful event in history was to bring us closer to God, to make us do tshuva, to come closer to God? You know what the rabbis say? The most powerful thing. Was it seeing the parting of the Red Sea? Was it the prophets coming to us and telling us what God was saying to them about rebuilding the temple? What was the most powerful moment in Jewish history to save the Jews? According to the rabbis, the most powerful moment in Jewish history was when King Ahasuerus took his ring off of his finger and gave it to Haman. And as a result of that, the Jewish people were able to experience true love. And they were able to really accept the Torah. It's on Purim that we actually received and accepted the Torah. Everybody says, if I say to you, when do we receive the Torah? What holiday do we receive the Torah? Shavuos. Everybody says Shavuos. What is the story of how we got the Torah on Shavuos? Does anybody know what the, when we hear the story that God went around to all the nations, he asked them if they wanted the Torah. We said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll take it. What was God doing at the time we said, we'll take it? Does anybody know what the interaction was between us and God according to the rabbis? Do you know, what was the setting going on when we said we'll take it? God took a mountain and held it over our heads and said, if you do not take this Torah, I'm going to crush all of you. He said, I'm going to pulverize you. And so they're like, Na'aseh v'nishma. We'll do it, and then we'll understand what you're saying. It's a pretty easy answer to give when you have a mountain hanging over your head. So people could argue, wait a second, I agreed to take the Torah, my ancestors agreed to take the Torah, the Jewish people agreed to take the Torah, but we didn't do it out of any real sense of commitment to God. We did it because we were being threatened with a mountain over our head. But the rabbis tell us that that's true. If it had just been that moment, we could have that argument and we could get out of doing the Torah. We could get out of doing the mitzvah. But later on, in the Gemara and Shabbos, it says that in the story of Purim, as a result of Ahasuerus taking off his ring and Haman threatening to destroy all the Jewish people, Kimu v'kiblu, the Jewish people said, we will take the Torah not because we are afraid, but because of love. Because they didn't say we'll take the Torah when Haman got the ring. They did it after they had won already. At that moment, they experienced the nature of God, of being pure love, that he was saving them just because. He was saving them because he loved them. He was showing true love to the Jewish people when they didn't deserve it. And he had to, and how did he have to do it? He had to put us in a position where our very lives were threatened, where the entire Jewish people were being threatened. And by doing that, we started to do tshuva. We came back and took control of our lives. When we were sitting at this festival of the king, where they're drinking out of the thing and they're dressed like the Kohen Gadol and they're having a grand old time, we had given up our agency in this world. We'd given up the ability to make decisions. We became like artificial intelligence. There was nothing there in us. We were just going with what the society said to do. We had no longer chosen to believe in God. We had chosen to just give ourselves over to whatever was happening, to run a program that was being foisted upon us, as opposed to making decisions to control our own lives. But the rabbis teach us that on Purim, that at that moment, the Hador Kibluha Me'avas Hanesh Shana Selahem. At that moment, once they saw how good God was to them, in the middle of all these things that they were doing, in the middle of a time where they did not deserve to be saved, God saved them. Because of that miracle, they decided to accept the Torah, and that was love, because they realized that God saved them just because. Now, it's amazing, because think about this. They didn't say, you know what, we're in trouble, we better love God. It was after the fact. They now knew that God was going to step in and save them if things got bad enough. There's a reason not to do anything, right? Now you know I'm always going to be saved. But we have to show God that we will do his mitzvot just because that's the way he treats us. The nature of our relationship with God is reciprocal. We love him the way he loves us. We love him and do the things he asked us to do. But the same way he created out of chesed, we have to love him and show him chesed. We have to do things for God just because we love him, for no practical purpose, not because we should get a reward, not for any other purpose, but just because God loves us and we love him. Rambam, Maimonides, teaches us that the nature of tshuva is that we should do all the mitzvot not because we have any fear of punishment, but only because we love God. And it's on Purim that we actually experience that. It's on Purim when God said to us, I'm going to save you just because I love you, that we can say back to him, we're going to do your mitzvah just because we love you.
So can I just ask you,
Yeah, please.
we have another Purim coming,
Yeah.
and there's lots of debt and bloodshed, so what do we, and what has to be done now? He's obviously not saving those people that have died just because, so what has to be done now? Can't bring those back, but here's another Purim just because, but they're not being saved.
Right.
All the ones that, so what's the answer now?
So the formula, and I can't tell you what God's going to do because I'm not a prophet yet, but God has made a decision to do something right now. This year, on the day when the final judgment came, a day later, the final judgment comes on a holiday called Hoshana Rabbah, the final receipt for the judgment. The next day, this happened. So this was clear. And look at the story. I'll tell you something. I go to a synagogue in Monsey, New York, and I have a great rabbi there. His name is Rabbi Weiner. Rabbi Weiner is an extremely stark rabbi. He's a very strict rabbi. And he is not somebody, he's somebody who talks deep into Torah and deep into learning and deep into logic. And on the week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, he gave a shir. And the shir he gave was that during the Yom Kippur War, or right before the Yom Kippur War, the Prime Minister of Israel had the king of a country fly in to Ben Gurion Airport. The king of Jordan flew into Ben Gurion Airport and met with her privately and said, look, on Yom Kippur, you're going to be attacked. And this is a fact. And this was his Devar Torah that he gave on the Shabbos between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. He said that the king of Jordan came in and flew in to see the prime minister and told her that they were going to be attacked on Yom Kippur. The son-in-law of the president of Egypt was a spy for Israel and told Golda Meir that they were going to be attacked. There was no question they were going to be attacked. And you know what? Golda Meir met with their generals, and they decided that there was no way this was going to happen. They had the best intelligence in the world from people who were in the room when the decision was made to attack Israel, and they said, it's never going to happen. And so the point of Rabbi Weiner's speech at the time, and this is between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, before October 7th, the point of his speech was, when God makes a decision, it's a decision that no matter how smart you are, no matter what you think you're going to do to get out of it, no matter what information you have, that's what's going to happen. God had made a decision by the Yom Kippur War, was the speech he gave, and it's clear God made a decision on October 7th. The stories of October 7th, there's stories that the guards on the border saw them preparing to come in for weeks before and told the generals. I can't say this is true, but that's the news reports are that they told the generals. But God had made a gezardin. He had made a decision. This was going to happen no matter how smart you are, no matter how... Look, if somebody goes to my house in Monsey, I get my iPhone starts ringing. I know somebody's walking on my property in Monsey, and they don't know people are crossing the border into Israel. Thousands of people crossing the border into Israel. I mean, this makes no sense. The reason it makes no sense is because God did this for a reason. God made a decision to do it. And you could say, well, why does God make Haman decide to destroy the Jewish people? Well, we can't understand why God makes these decisions, but we know what the formula is when those decisions are made.
Isn't Hoshana Rabbah the same day Simchat Torah in Israel?
Hoshana Rabbah is the day before Simchas Torah. It's you're thinking of Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah, but the formula for what to do when God makes a decision like this is very simple. It's the formula that Esther told us to do. It's what we did when God decided to save us. We went out and we started to daven, and we started to fast, and we started to become closer as a nation. We became one as a people, and we started to show love to each other and love to God. And that is what we did in the time of Purim. Now, would God have saved us anyway? Well, the fact of the matter is, the big miracle, what's the big miracle of the story of Purim? The big miracle of the story of Purim is King Achashverosh can't sleep one night. One night he can't sleep, and he reads in a book that he never rewarded Mordechai, and that's the beginning of the downfall of Haman. And when you read the story, you see God's hand in every single thing that happens. But I guarantee you, if you were living in Shushan at the time, you would not have been able to see it while it was happening. It's only after the fact, looking back, that you can actually see what was happening. So it didn't make a difference. God had made a decision to save the Jewish people. In fact, Mordechai specifically tells Queen Esther, he says, go in and ask Achashverosh to save the Jewish people. And what does Queen Esther say? She's like, I'm not going. If you walk into the king unannounced, you know what happens to you? You get killed. So he says, look, the Jews are going to be saved no matter what you do. It doesn't make a difference if you do it, somebody else will do it. But if you want to be part of this, do it. If you don't want to be part of this, if you want to check out, then, you won't be part of the salvation of the Jewish people. God had decided to save the Jewish people. There's a story about Abraham Avinu. Abraham, after he's visited by the three angels, God says, should I tell Abraham what I'm going to do? And then he says, he's going to be a great nation. I'm going to tell him. And he tells him that he's going to destroy the nation of Sodom, of stone. So let me ask you a question. Abraham stands up there and begs God not to destroy these people, not to destroy the nation of stone. But God had said, I plan to do this. What was the point of Abraham doing that? What was the point of Abraham doing it? God had made a decision. God had said, I'm going to destroy the nation of stone. This is in the Torah. I have made a decision of what I'm going to do. Should I tell Abraham? He's going to be a great nation. And so it's perplexing. He makes Abraham daven for something he's made a decision about. He knew exactly what was going to happen, but he made Abraham daven for it anyway. But if you understand that after he says, I'm going to make him a great nation, the reason he made him daven was because the davening wasn't rewarded with saving stone. It was rewarded with making his children his beloved nation. It's the nature of us as Jews to come to God when times of trouble. And that's the whole essence of Purim, is that God saved us just because. And we have to treat God the same way. We have to show him the same love. And so when you look at technology, look at artificial intelligence, you look at the internet, and there are all these statistics that the experts say that we are going to have little or no control over our lives in the next 10 years. Now, some say that we will, many say we will not because of artificial intelligence. And as we enter a phase where technology is even telling us that we have no control, God says to us, it's true, I'm in control of everything. But you know what? I love you, and I'm going to do things good for you just because of chesed, because of kindness. And that's the way I want you to treat me. I want you to treat me with chesed. I want you to do for me just because you love me. And so on Purim, we have the experience of just because. And every mitzvah is devoted to that. Giving gifts to each other, giving gifts to the poor people, drinking until you don't even know the difference between good and evil, because it doesn't make a difference. It's all in God's hands. But the entire world is built on love. And so the lesson of Purim is that we all have to show love. Love for each other, love for God. You have to love each other as you love yourself. This is the major principle of the Torah. So the reason, and we started out with this idea, the reason this is such a joyous time of year, that this is the most precious time of year, the happiest time of year, that Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, that it's almost as good as Purim. The reason it's such a powerful time of year and such a happy time of year is it's a time when God is overtly showing his love for us. And the lessons of Purim, the lessons of the day of Purim, are that we have to do the same for him. We have to kimu b'kiblu. We have to accept the Torah with love. We have to do mitzvot. To answer your question, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know why Hashem has done what he's done. But I know what we're supposed to do. What we're supposed to do is we're supposed to be davening and doing the mitzvah. And ideally, we shouldn't be doing it because it's what we're supposed to do, or our parents told us to do it, or it's what our rabbi says to do it, and if I don't do it, I'm going to get punished. It's not about any of that. It's because the entire essence of existence, your entire purpose for being here is love, is about chesed, is about kindness. And the way we show kindness is by doing the mitzvah. The way we do the mitzvot is to say, I know it doesn't make a difference if I eat. It doesn't make a difference in what God's going to do in the universe, whether I daven or not. It really doesn't. It does in the sense, from our perspective, we change ourselves and we connect more with the things as they unfold. Just like Esther, no matter what she had done, the Jewish people were going to be saved. But you can either be part of the program or not part of the program. And this idea of having this decision-making capability is what makes us human and what God created us for. So when we see a world where the essence of humanity is being tested, with artificial intelligence, people saying that it's alive the way we're alive, we have to be B'Tselem Elokim. We have to be created in the image of God and treat each other and the world, and most importantly, ourselves and God, with chesed and with love. And that's why this is the happiest time of year. So I want to wish everyone at Freilich a happy Purim, that you should experience true happiness, unfortunately.
Thank you.